Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Dr. Morgan. I'm your resident Latin teacher, and today I'm going to be talking to you about what Cleopatra and Covid can teach us about tenacity. When I was growing up, I was fascinated with Cleopatra, this glamorous queen who ruled a wealthy country. I loved ancient history from the start, and there are few women in those narratives who rise to positions of real power. So I was immediately drawn to her. But in our popular culture, Cleopatra has frequently been portrayed as a seductress and a woman of reckless ambition. On stage and screen, Cleopatra plays the lover, a glamorous woman, beautiful, powerful to be sure, but always alongside a man she had seduced. This was hardly the role model my parents wanted for their headstrong teenage daughter. But the Cleopatra in these plays and movies, even the ancient poems and histories about her, are not concerned with facts. They are casting a role, creating a character to be a worthy but dangerous opponent for the always right and victorious Rome. Although Cleopatra is most famous for seducing two of the most powerful men alive, the Roman generals Julius Caesar and Mark Antony, she was a fascinating person in her own right. So who was the actual Cleopatra? Well, to begin with, she was not Egyptian, not ethnically at least. She was a 10th generation descendant of Macedonian Greeks who had been ruling Egypt as pharaohs since the conquest and death of Alexander the Great 300 years prior. She was also young when she took the throne, only 18 when she assumed power alongside her brother, which quickly spiraled into a civil war. When Julius Caesar arrived in Egypt, she not only convinced him to help her win sole power, but also to keep Egypt autonomous from Roman authority. Her reign lasted for 22 years before she died by her own hand at the age of 39. At the height of her power, she controlled the entire eastern Mediterranean, and for a moment she held the fate of the Western world in her hands. Instead of recognizing her as a cunning political strategist and negotiator, historians vilified her independence and spirit. In her 22-year reign, she suppressed an insurrection in her country, stabilized the currency, addressed corruption, and opened the doors to the public granaries to help people through a drought. All hallmarks of strong and compassionate leadership. Even ancient biographers acknowledge that the attraction to her was not simply physical. It was her intellect and wit that impressed others. She had an astute grasp of military affairs, commanded armies, and could speak at least 7 languages. She was in charge of and educated in a city with the greatest library in the Mediterranean. Plus, she was the richest woman in the world. That might count for something to a bankrupt Roman general. When Caesar was in Egypt, she introduced him to new ideas of governance and organization. He returned to Rome and reformed the calendar, commissioned a census, and made plans for public building projects, including a library. After Caesar's assassination, she supported the defeat of his assassins and offered assistance to his allies, Octavian and Mark Antony. When Mark Antony positioned himself in the Eastern territories, Cleopatra made an alliance again and retained her autonomy and power. It wasn't until Octavian in Rome, threatened by these circumstances, convinced the Roman Senate to declare Mark Antony an enemy of the state. Rome's navy defeated Cleopatra's fleet. Antony was killed, Cleopatra captured. Fearing public humiliation and execution, she took her own life. Octavian annexed Egypt for Rome, having defeated his last main rival. This victory over Cleopatra essentially marked the transition from republic to empire. Because Octavian was the victor, it is his authors who wrote Cleopatra's biography and set the standard for depicting this powerful queen. A tenacious young woman, a mother, a great general, a strategist, a leader, villainized precisely for the threat posed by her gender and power. If we look past the movie trailers, the Shakespearean dramas, the biased biographies, and we focus on the circumstances, we find something quite remarkable. A model of tenacity in an adverse situation. A woman in an incredibly patriarchal society, and a young woman at that, had the audacity to rule. She fought for her place on the throne and for the autonomy of her country. She served as a strong and magnanimous leader and persevered through Roman civil wars. She protected her children and she bettered her community because she recognized what was best for them and she stepped up into that role. As a woman, she was constantly underestimated by her male counterparts, but she used that misguided perception of weakness to accomplish great things. For when I am weak, then I am strong. We have all been misunderstood and underestimated at some point in our lives, most of the time for things we have no control over. Prejudice about our gender, the color of our skin, our age, our sexuality. People will underestimate you because of your height, your weight, the way we dress, our hair color, tattoos, piercings, accents, you name it, and someone out there will have an opinion about it. But I am not those people's opinions. I am not their misguided impressions. And you are not their prejudice. This is where tenacity gives us strength. Tenacity allows us to recognize that those prejudices are simply opportunities. Opportunities to step up, to prove someone wrong, to prove yourself better, to demonstrate strength from weakness. Now, I assure you that I do not think being a woman is a weakness. Far from it. But I do know that many people in different circumstances perceive it to be. And while this can certainly be frustrating, I've also leaned into those opportunities. Being a woman was great when I started playing co-ed soccer as an adult. All too often, the male defender would dismiss the girl out on the wing and cheat in to cover that male center mid. Until that center mid passed to the outside corner, I chased it down and sent it in as a perfect cross for a goal. Many of you will find yourselves at various moments existing in your own weaknesses, some lasting and some temporary. Perhaps you have a learning difference. You have dyslexia. At times in school, this difference seems like a weakness, a weight on you. But one day you might recognize that you've spent your entire educational life practicing that skill of slow and careful reading, of patience. Is it frustrating? Absolutely. But now you have the skills to navigate those Apple's terms of agreement. You have the skills to read the fine print, to find the best student loan, or to find the perfect precedent in all of the cases to win your court case. And that is finding strength in weakness. Some of you have failed quizzes, but that quiz is not the end. That's the beginning of a conversation. And tenacity lets you recognize that now you can go and meet with your teacher and learn the material in a way that sticks. So you're ready for the next test and the final. That is building strength from weakness. And sometimes you're stuck inside your house for weeks on end with limited to no physical interaction with the outside world. It can be easy to get depressed, to get lonely, to become impatient and frustrated and anxious. The most important thing that we can all do at this time is to take care of ourselves and our loved ones. And if you are practicing that self-care and looking out for those in your home, then I also want you to broaden your perspective. Look around for the positive stories that are going on on the news and in our neighborhoods and in our own parish community, and see how so many people are using this time of weakness to find their strength, and how they are using their strength to help those who are weak. Whether it's Miss Makins and Mr. Cribbs making PPE for hospital workers, Miss Geisler offering at-home art activities, Mrs. Sobani and Mrs. Binkley reading story time to the students, Mrs. Monaco offering yoga classes, parish alum teaching dance routines and giving lessons to our current students, parish parents delivering signs to teachers, coaches and admin delivering gifts to seniors, counselors leading meditation sessions, and our own students offering cooking lessons. It is easy to feel down in these times. It is easy to keep our heads down, blinders on, and trudging along. And honestly, if that's what you need to do to just survive, to get through the end of the school year, then you do you. But if you can look up, if you want to create some kind of meaning in all of this, if you want to come out of these weak and bleak days with some kind of purpose, then be tenacious. Step up to the challenge that life has thrown at all of us. You're young and quarantined. You can do nothing of impact. That's what the naysayers will say. Well, let's prove them wrong. Cleopatra was young and a woman, and she led an entire country to 20 years of peace and prosperity. You just have to stop fighting with your sister. And remember that tenacity isn't measured by the grandiosity of the adversity. It's not judged on the amount of people impacted. Tenacity is a character trait that is developed and honed over time through small acts and big gestures of you stepping up, asking for help and offering gratitude, doing what's right, and bringing others along. So as we finish out the school year, as we head into what will certainly be a different kind of summer, try to find your strength, step up, and be just a little bit tenacious. Thank you.